The Battle of Los Angeles was a name given to the 1942 event involving UFOs. A large hovering aircraft took the skies of Los Angeles on February 1942, with some believing it was an attack from Japan. The US Army shot 1,400 anti-aircraft shells at it with no apparent damage.
The Tether Incident. February 25, 1996, NASA recorded astounding UFO footage while experimenting with a satellite in space. The satellite was attached to a 12-mile-long electricity-conducting tether. When the tether suddenly broke, the satellite drifts 100 miles away and seemingly attracts some company. August 4, 1993, he caught on film this mysterious object hovering over Florida. The strange aircraft was also captured on film by 2 other witnesses. The object is seen shooting a bright light towards the ground, then it shoots the same light straight at the camera. The Mexican Air Force Incident. In 2003, Mexican airport pilots caught 11 unidentified flying objects over the skies of southern Campeche state. The pilots were flying at an altitude of about 3,500 meters when they were filming the UFOs. Only 3 of the objects shown up on the plane's radar before disappearing. The Defense Department spokesperson confirmed that the video was taken by Mexican Air Force but denied further comment.
The Washington Flap. On the nights of July 12th and July 29th in 1952, a series of bright orbs were reported being seen across Washington, D.C. This resulted in an official order to shoot down the UFOs from the White House. A news story reported that jet pilots had been placed on a 24-hour nationwide alert against flying saucers, with the orders to shoot them down if they ignored orders to land.
The Gulf Breeze Tapes. On November 11, 1987, a series of UFO sightings began to emerge in Gulf Breeze, a small town in Florida. This became known as the Gulf Breeze UFO Incident. A series of pictures of the UFOs were delivered to local newspapers, and videotapes were made public. The content appeared to show a dome-like object hovering over the city. In 1993, more Gulf Breeze citizens were startled to find what appeared to be the same objects flying around their city once again. And again in 1995.
That is real. That's a real thing, dude. That is the real thing. What the hell did it...
Many UFO enthusiasts consider this footage to be some of the most convincing evidence of the existence of extraterrestrials. Captured on June 12, 2008, a metallic disc-shaped object was seen hovering in the night sky over Kumburgaz, Turkey, about 58 kilometers west of Istanbul. Night worker Murat Yeltsin Yalman was able to film the object, which he spotted hovering over the ocean. The footage shows a bright, bowl-shaped object sitting in the black of the night sky. The surface of the craft appears to react to the light of the moon, reflecting the light on one side. At one point during the clip, you can almost make out the outline of 2 beings sitting in the craft. They look to have round, bulbous heads and large black eyes. This is just one of many pieces of footage that claim to have captured a very similar looking craft flying in the exact same place. From 2007 to 2009, local residents were reporting a strange disc-like object floating in the sky. The sightings were sometimes accompanied by balls of orange and red light. The final piece of 2009 footage was witnessed by up to 9 people, including Roger Lear, a famed podiatric surgeon and ufologist, who had just attended a UFO conference in nearby Istanbul. Lear personally witnessed Yalman take the footage with his camera. He was interviewed numerous times about the incident before his death in 2014.
The Shaoshan Incident. An unidentified flying object was found above the Shaoshan airport in China, causing the airport to cease operations on July 7, 2010. The Air Traffic Control Department were notified after it interrupted 18 flights. A spokesman from the Civil Aviation Administration of China confirmed that the matter was under investigation but declined to disclose further details.
A group of former U.S. servicemen is convinced extraterrestrials are interfering with nuclear weapons, as RT's Cedric Moon explains.
That's a claim made by the men in this room.
Our missiles began going into what's called a no-go condition or unlaunchable. Essentially, they were disabled.
Detailed in this report, full of court-sanctioned sworn affidavits.
The witnesses have described these craft as disc-shaped or cylindrical shaped or spherical. My name's Robert Hastings. Thank you for coming.
These are men who might know what may have gone. They're former Air Force missile launch officers, missile base officers, who say UFOs make nuclear weapon systems go haywire.
In 1966, according to a launch officer, David Shore, his missiles were temporarily activated just as his security guard was reporting a bright object moving from missile to missile to missile.
10, 9, 8.
And it's not just in the United States. Also,
4, 3,
in Russia.
2, 1.
Like a 1982 incident that happened in then Soviet Ukraine.
Given the fact that these incidents have gone on over there, including one incident of their missiles being temporarily activated when a UFO was hovering above the missile base, identical to what occurred here, I think we can rule out that whoever are piloting these craft are either American or Russian.
Reports of flying saucers dominated UFO sightings for an entire generation. Today there's a new type of craft that seems to be threatening our skies. It's fast, it's mysterious, and to me it's a lot more frightening than its predecessor. It's the Black Triangle. And again, we're here joined by Nick Pope. Let's talk about the triangles. Now, when did these things start popping up?
There are some reports going back as far as the 50s, but really the modern black triangle, flying triangle mystery really takes off, I guess, in the 80s.
We have witness reports throughout the 60s and 70s, but they're sporadic. And then, as you would say, on come the waves. And that brings us to 1980 and the now infamous Rendlesham Forest Triangle.
It's been called Britain's Roswell.
And these are military personnel, U.S. Air Force personnel, go into the forest to investigate lights, and they see this, I think they estimated 10 foot black, solid black triangle, and it levitates.
And this thing, unlike most UFOs, actually landed. So he really did get up close and personal with it.
Rendlesham, of course, you could write a whole book about. In fact, you did write a whole book about Rendlesham. Our next episode actually is going to focus completely on this crazy incident. But for sake of this episode, we're going to move on and chronologically follow this triangle around the world. The next, chronologically speaking, seem to be the Hudson Valley sightings.
Sure. The Hudson Valley sightings are really bizarre, but unlike Rendlesham, this thing is much bigger. I mean, we're talking here, some of the witnesses will talk about these things being the size of football fields, but hovering or moving very slowly in the sky and then accelerating away to the horizon at an incredible rate.
Thousands of witnesses describe seeing massive objects in the sky, outlined by colorful lights. But I Skyped with one of the few who managed to film what she saw.
We were actually driving down Route 84, going eastbound
when we saw this thing in the sky. So when we got home, we thought we lost it, and my husband went to let the dog out, and he called me and he said, "You got to see this. Come out here. It's back." We ran in and grabbed the video camera and just started taking images of it. It was a ring of lights, but when this round object flew over, we could not see through it. Lights are actually turning. They were turning to the left, and they started changing colors as they turned.
While many accounts described V-shaped or boomerang-shaped objects, Lori says she saw it from a different perspective.
So could it have been a V-type shape formation or a boomerang shape? It's possible, yes. From where I was standing, I was more east of the object, so I could have been looking at it from a different angle.
It's constant. It's night after night, week after week, month after month of the same thing, correct?
Yes, and people are beginning to think, why aren't the authorities doing something? Or maybe the authorities know all about this and maybe there's nothing they can do. But the people there feel almost as if they're under siege.
From what I understand of the Hudson Valley wave, people are calling 911, people are calling airports, and police officers are showing up and seeing these things also, and reporting that they have seen these things.
Yes,
Correct.
You think that the police are going to turn up and be the ones to debunk this, but as you say, the police turn up and heck, if there's this huge great thing just hanging in the sky, of course they're going to see it too, and that's why, yes, we have many police witnesses. It was consistently UK government policy to downplay this subject. Partly, as I say, it's just the sheer embarrassment of saying there are things in our airspace and we don't know what they are.
Let's jump across the Atlantic from the Hudson Valley to Belgium. In 1990, another wave of triangles hits Belgium.
Sure, actually from 89 through to 90 and culminating on one particular night, there is this wave of sightings. And when I say wave, let me just contextualize this. I'm talking about hundreds of sightings over a period of just a few months in a very small, when you think about it in global terms, geographical area. So this wave of sightings with many of the witnesses being police officers. For example, I've seen reports of police officers on patrol jumping into their car, trying to chase some object that they've seen, picking up the phone, calling the Air Force, saying, what's going on in our skies? And then there's this one night, March 30th, late on March 30th, early hours March 31st, 1990, a huge triangular UFO is seen over large parts of Belgium. The Belgian Air Force track it on radar on both the Belgian national radar system and that's part of the wider NATO integrated air defense system. They scramble two F-16 fighter interceptors. Those jets go up. The pilots get a lock on to this object with their airborne radars. So it's been tracked on the ground, in the air. The pilots are repeatedly vectored towards this UFO. And every time they get close, the UFO breaks the radar lock, moves, the pilots have to reacquire it, and a game of virtual cat and mouse takes place in the skies over Belgium.
At what point is that famous photo taken from the underneath?
Now, that, I believe, was taken at some stage on that particular night. I don't know at exactly what time, and actually the original photo is quite dark, but when you try and touch it up a little, a craft seems to emerge out of the darkness.
The main thing that I take away from Belgium before we move on is, of all the people in different places there who saw something, many of them were either interviewed, asked to draw something, this person over here and this person. And when you look at the collection of drawings and sketches and descriptions, it's eerily similar.
Absolutely, it is the same craft. And by the way, I have spoken to the Belgian general, Wilfred de Brouwer, who led the official investigation into this, and he talked me through this in great detail. And also, when I was at the Ministry of Defence doing the job on the UFO program, we made inquiries of the Belgians through our embassy, and we spoke to General de Brouwer, we spoke to the two F-16 pilots. The official conclusion of the Belgian government, I mean, they came out and said so, is this was real and we have no idea what it was.
Approximately 140 UFO sightings were reported. Hundreds of people saw a majestic triangular craft with a span of approximately 120 feet. Powerful beaming spotlights moving very slowly without making any significant noise, but in several cases accelerating to very high speeds. In short, the Belgian UFO wave was exceptional and the Air Force could not identify the nature, origin and intentions of the reported phenomena. Thank you very much.
Oh my God, dude. And it's the Belgian government officially on the record publicly is like, that's a UFO.
Yes, there are declassified Belgian Air Force documents that set all this out.
I've read into the Belgian wave. We're not going to go any further into it, but I suggest anyone watching, there are some crazy details behind these sightings. Let's jump back across the Atlantic to Arizona, 97. Now I know the Phoenix Lights, one of the most famous bulk wave sightings ever.
I spoke to a witness who, and I said to try and get a sense of this, well, how big was this thing and how low was it? And he said to me, Nick, if I had thrown a rock at this, I would have hit the underside of it. Everyone was just stopped. Cars were pulled up. They were looking out. They were pointing. And so for every witness we have, and we have like dozens if not hundreds, there are probably hundreds if not thousands more who saw it, but who have never come forward officially and gone on the record.
Years later, the governor himself comes out to admit that he also, this is of course once he's retired and it won't kill his career, comes out and says, yeah, I also saw it that night. I saw a triangular craft.
I saw something that defied logic and challenged my reality. I witnessed a massive delta-shaped craft that silently navigated over the Squaw Peak area in North Phoenix in the evening, and it was truly breathtaking.
Today marking 21 years since the Phoenix Lights first appeared in the sky.
This event called Lights Over Phoenix. What did you see?
Well, I saw a huge craft just kind of come right over Squaw Peak. That was, it was just breathtaking, and unquestionably it was a UFO, which means unidentified flying object.
Right. Doesn't mean we're being visited.
Well, it's nothing like anything I've ever seen.
And you're an Air Force guy.
Yeah, and a pilot. Got a lot of hours flying, so it was pretty breathtaking.
How big?
Bigger than anything I've ever seen in the sky.
Like an aircraft carrier in the sky?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And it was hard to define because of the light in terms of the size, but it was absolutely silent and had sort of eerie embedded lights, and so that's what I saw.
Do you believe it was ours? Do you believe it was something from the U.S. government that they were kind of flying around?
No, it wasn't even close to a B. It was much bigger than a B-1. A B-1 actually isn't that big.
Right.
I mean, if it's at low altitude, it'll appear big, but no, this was totally different.
Something, though, that you think our own government may have been kind of running by a populated area to see what would happen?
I don't think so. I think this was technologically far advanced. This is something from another world,
Is that what?
And I really believe that. I believe that. But I've always been open to that. We're not alone in the universe.
I agree with you.
We're going to find that out one way or the other.
I do believe that we're not alone. I just don't know that we've been visited. But you think maybe that night we were?
I think so. Yeah, there've been so many different sort of sightings and inexplicable phenomena that, But the disparity in terms of technological progress would be so vast that we would be, I think, of sort of no consequence to whoever is visiting us, because the technology to get here would be just beyond anything we could imagine.
Did it hover?
No, it was just going in a straight line.
Slow pace?
Yeah, slow pace, yeah. And then, there were all the sightings.
Flares.
There were the sightings of the America West plane coming into Sky Harbor, said he could have landed on it.
It was enormous.
Yeah.
Like an aircraft carrier in the sky? Is that about as close as
I think that's a fair description, yeah.
Has there ever been an official statement on this incident?
Some of the military, I believe, put out a statement to say that there had been maybe some military exercise going on involving aircraft dropping flares.
Flares, right.
The military says the lights over Arizona last night were flares, but the people who saw the lights last night say they couldn't have been flares. The lights were too bright.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because you're investigate these things, but flares, they fall.
Yeah.
And then the wind separates them. And what we're observing in the Phoenix lights are lights that are consistent distance from each other, and they don't deviate.
So one theory about the aircraft is that, of course, those aircraft would have been scrambled, as we know military jets are often scrambled, to investigate the UFOs. So, yeah, I'm not saying that there were no aircraft there, and maybe some of them later, around 10 in the evening, dropped flares, but because they too were part of maybe an operation to try and find out what the heck this thing was.
And this takes us later to Illinois, in St. Clair, Illinois in 2000, where we see very similar triangles to the Phoenix lights. Okay, so I actually Skyped with David Marler, who literally wrote the book on triangular UFOs. I did a Skype interview with him. Here's some things that he had to say. Tell me about St. Clair, Illinois in 2000.
An over-the-road truck driver was coming home late one morning. He happens to see this extremely bright light off to the northeast. Within a matter of a few minutes, as he's standing there, this light, which is obviously now, as it comes closer, is a light affixed to a large object, silently, very gently floats over the tree line, and he notices it slowly disappear to the southwest. He immediately notifies the police of what he had just witnessed. They weren't sure if he was altogether there, reporting a UFO, but he was very emphatic that if you contact Lebanon, Illinois police, they should see it, because it was basically that trajectory, which is the direction it was heading in. They contact Officer Ed Barton, and he's making a joke about it initially. We have the dispatch tapes where you can hear the officers talking to each other. But very shortly, his skepticism erodes.
Be advised, there's a very bright white light east of town. Looks like it's just east of Summerfield, and it keeps changing colors. I'll go there and see if maybe it's an aircraft. It doesn't look like an aircraft, though.
The object came directly overhead, and what he witnessed was a large, essentially isosceles triangle.
This object was above me about 500 feet. It was huge.
The object, as it's hovering there, made a flat turn like that. It didn't bank like conventional aircraft where you have a large turn radius. Made a flat turn, executed that maneuver, and then rapidly accelerated in the blink of an eye to the southwest. He immediately gets on the radio, states, well, whatever it is, it seems to be headed towards Shiloh, which was the direction of the next neighboring town in that direction.
10-4, well, whether it's a plane or not, it's heading westbound now. It should be really close to Scott now.
And the other officer in Shiloh states immediately, yeah, I see it, but I don't know what the heck it is.
2550, I see something, but I don't know what the heck it is.
So we have these officers in radio contact as they're visually tracking this object. And it was then cited subsequent to that by two other police officers and another officer that came forward later, and we were able to establish the flight path of this UFO.
I've got that object inside also. Are you serious? It's huge.
It was, most witnesses described it as triangular in shape with various lighting characteristics, but all of them, with the exception of one, stated it was completely silent. One officer said he thought he heard a slight humming or droning sound with the object, but highly unusual. What's interesting about the case is the caliber of the witnesses, the fact that it flew in very close proximity to Scott Air Force Base, within 1 to 2 miles, yet Scott Air Force Base denied any knowledge of it. We have an official statement that they weren't testing or supporting the test of any aircraft in that area at that time. The radar system was down, so we didn't have any radar data associated with that. The ability for this object to hover, rapidly accelerate, and do so with a complete absence of a sonic boom is highly suggestive that this is someone else's technology.
And 4 years later, there was another mass sighting in Illinois. So we have the footage of this, but basically in Tinley Park, on more than one night, a large triangular formation of lights is seen over the city, videotaped by residents. When they zoom in on the lights give off a cherry red, with almost, it looks like a rainbow of lights spinning in each of these things. And again, I think to the naked eye, these look like three individual things, as I think people saw the Phoenix lights as individual little lights.
What we're looking at very often with these triangular UFOs is a flat triangle with the witnesses essentially being underneath it.
You're suggesting that these are actually attached on the corners of a craft.
Yes, you're looking at three lights at each tip of the triangle. And very often, and it's interesting, we see this with Tinley Park, I think, a hint of a fainter, maybe whiter light bang in the center of the underside of this thing. Now, are any of these things navigation lights, and in which case why would they need lights? Or are they connected, as many believe, with the propulsion system of this UFO?
In this age where everyone's got a cell phone that shoots 4K video in their pocket, where are the Phoenix lights now? Where are the Tinley Park lights? Where are the Hudson Valley lights? Now would be a great time to get them on cell phone video or something now. Where'd they go? Or are we due for a return?
This is an events-led phenomenon, and I think your second point was probably the answer. We are overdue for a huge mass sighting, and in this modern age with ubiquitous cell phones and things, yes, if something on the scale of Hudson Valley or Phoenix lights happens today, it will be undeniable. There will be hundreds, if not thousands, of high quality photos and videos. Nobody will be able to deny it, and maybe, just maybe, it will push the whole question over the line. It will take us from a situation where we have evidence to a situation where we have absolutely definitive proof. You just never know when the next absolutely mega case is going to hit. You may have another Roswell tomorrow. You may have another Hudson Valley the day after. You may have another Rendlesham next week.